Our guest this week on Personally Speaking is Dion. He is the iconic singer and songwriter who's now written a great book. Please stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr Jim Lisante, and singer-songwriter Dion DiMucci joins me now. Dion was the lead singer of the Bronx-based doo-wop legends, the Belmonts. In January 1959, Dion and the Belmonts had a hit with the doo-wop ballad Teenager in Love. After splitting with the Belmonts, Dion had a #1 hit with Runaround Sue in 1961. In the early 1960s, Dion returned to heroin, which he first started using as a teenager. And he finally kicked that, along with all other drugs, in 1968, the year of his comeback hit, Abraham, Martin, and John. In 1989, Dion was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Lou Reed. Throughout his career, he has received 12 gold records and 39 top 40 hits. Dion has written his third autobiography, and it's called Dion, the Rock and Roll Philosopher, co-authored with his friend and recovery partner, Adam Jablin. The book focuses on the importance of Dion's faith and how forgiveness is the foundation of all healing. Dion has been married to his wife, Susan, for 62 years, and together they raised 3 daughters. He's here with us today to talk about his life, his career, and his Catholic faith, and the values that matter the most to him. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking, Dion DiMucci. Dion DiMucci, as I mentioned in our introduction, is our guest. We're talking about his new book, Dion, the Rock and Roll Philosopher. Dion, thanks so much for coming on our program. You look great. You sound great. Let me ask you a question. In the book, there's a part where you have this great religious, spiritual revelation. Jesus is alive. And then you go home and you tell Susan, your long, wonderful wife, Jesus is alive. And she says, I know that. So I got to ask you, you came to a revelation that she knew already. Where is the faith of Susan from?
Well, my wife, she's a natural. She's from Vermont, and she moved down to the Bronx in the '50s, and she's never changed. I know her for 70 years, and I don't know, she went to I think a Catholic high school in the Bronx, Preston. I can't. Uh, and she just always was a natural, she's never changed. She's very rooted in her faith, always believed, and she's a sweet person and a lot of wisdom and beautiful.
Yeah, but we'll go back to that. When you guys, very young, decided to get married, I'm always intrigued by when you make a bet on a person that they're going to be your spouse, your partner for life. That's an amazing act of faith. So what did you see in her as a young woman that made you say, I can build a life with this great gal?
Well, I was a menace to serenity back then. I walked in the room without no harmony, no character. And this girl, when I first met her, I was 16, she was 14, Monsignor. It's a crazy thing. It's like uh, I saw her, and it's all I could think about.
Mm.
I was in junior high school or high school, and I remember going to class, and I couldn't think of anything else but wanting to leave school and just to look at her. She was exotic for the Bronx. Who moves to the Bronx, Monsignor? Nobody moves to the Bronx. Everybody moves out of the.
Right,
People are born in the Bronx or they move out. They don't move into the Bronx.
right, right.
So she was a redhead, and it's a funny thing. Monsignor Peternaconi at Mount Carmel Catholic Church, which was the hub of Little Italy, where I grew up, about 1 block south of Fordham University, 1 block west of Bronx Zoo, and then a mile east of the concourse, which is the Champs-Élysées of the Bronx.
Right.
And it was an Italian neighborhood, and she comes into it. And Monsignor Pennicone, I used to pass him all the time. I had to walk from my house past the church. It was a small, beautiful cathedral. It was the hub of Little Italy in my neighborhood, and I would pass that church. And he'd be walking up and down saying his prayers outside and talking to the people in the neighborhood. That was his deal. He just wanted to save souls.
Yeah.
And he'd call me over all the time. I remember one time he said, Dion, what's this Rebel Without a Cause? What's this movie? And I said, Monsignor, I said, this is James Dean movie. This is a great movie. And he said, why rebel without a cause? Rebel without a cause. You got to rebel for the truth, Dion. I didn't know what he was talking about, but he said, and then he said, what makes a man happy? Now I remember these things, Monsignor, because he drilled them into my head. Everybody would scatter, but I loved him engaging me in this thought. I don't know why, but that's the way I was when I was a kid. I was kind of weird reading St. Thomas Aquinas. So he would say, what makes a man happy? He would ask me these questions. And I said, Monsignor, if I could get a J200 guitar and if I could get a date with Susan, she just moved down from Vermont. She's a righteous fox, Monsignor. She's a beauty. She's a beautiful girl. I got to get a date with this girl, Monsignor. I said, and if I could get a Ford Thunderbird with black leather bucket seats and wire chrome wheels, I'd be a happy guy, and maybe a hit record, Monsignor. Right. Then he'd say, no, Dion, the virtuous man is a happy man. And I didn't know what he was talking about. I had no idea what virtue was. And he drilled it into me. I asked him what's virtue, and he said, it's a habitual and firm disposition to do the good.
Okay, good.
And I was up to no good at that time. Because the cool of the streets and the lure of the gang, all my boys were across the street, yelling at me. Joe BBI's, Ralphie Moach, all the guys in the neighborhood. But I would sit there and listen to him. So later on, a lot of these things came to be in my mind. They settled where I understood them.
Yeah. Dion, in the book, you also talk about the fact that you've had a roller coaster ride of a life, no doubt about that. And in particular, I was thinking back to who introduces us to the stuff that gets us in trouble. So you've been very honest about battling with addiction through the years, particularly with drugs. I mention that because when you look back, as you so beautifully do, into your time growing up in the Bronx, do you remember who invited you first to walk down that path that was a dark path, namely addiction? Was it a best friend? Was it a stranger? How did you get into that world?
I thought about this because people ask me, that question. Yeah. And the only thing I could come up with is I really had no idea how to handle emotions or my thoughts. I'd have these thoughts and, I know feelings come from thoughts, but I had no way of handling it. We didn't have my parents would shut you down. If you ever mentioned that you were frightened over something, the only thing they could say is, shut up, don't be frightened over anything. You're crazy to be fearful. You're nuts to be fearful. It's wrong to be fearful. You shouldn't be fearful. And I'm thinking, I could swear I'm having some fear about, so I really didn't know how to handle these things. And when I think drugs came into the neighborhood and I tried them, they shut that down, and I didn't have to second guess my thoughts. When I walked up to Susan to talk to her, I might have taken something, and
Hmm.
I thought I knew everything. I didn't have to second guess
Yeah.
my feelings or anything. I thought like I'm the man. Here I am. What do you want to know? I thought I knew everything. It gives you a feeling of you think you found heaven, you found hell, really, because eventually
Right.
it'll take you down and take everything down around you.
Dion, you answered one part of my question before, which was, what did you see in Susan? And there's a lot, not just the beauty, but the solidness of this great soul from Vermont. But I want to ask you, do you have any idea what she saw in you?
Well, I always joke with her. I say you have a high tolerance for unacceptable behavior. But I don't, I think she saw my potential. She must have seen it because of here I am, and I think I have if you unzipped my mind and looked inside these days, you'd see a very peaceful, orderly place. And God's in my life, and I've become a good man because of Christ. And maybe she saw that. I have no idea, but she was, when she just was lovely when I saw her, soft spoken and intelligent and insightful, and she was nice
Mm.
other than being just beautiful and sexy and intelligent. She was nice. She was and truthful. She was like, at one time when I was bad into the drugs, she looked at me and she said, Dion, if you choose those drugs, she said, I'd go to hell for you. But if you choose those drugs, you could go to hell for yourself.
Wow.
And she walked. She just walked away from it. And I
Yeah.
didn't want to lose her.
That's a powerful challenge. Now, for those who don't know, Susan and Dion DiMucci, whose book is called Dion, the Rock and Roll Philosopher, they also brought into the world children, family. I'm just wondering, when you're in a world like the arts, which is always indefinite and unpredictable, how did you decide we're going to take the risk of being parents? And I guess more importantly, those great values that Susan was living always, and you were trying to live with the ups and downs of life. Did it intimidate you or frighten you to be a dad?
I wish I could say I was conscious enough to make these decisions. It just happened. It just happened.
Thank you for your
I
honesty,
mean, later on, maybe the third one, we, made some conscious decision about it. But uh, all I know is when they came along, I had great love,
Hmm.
and I wanted to. I wanted to be a good father. I wanted to love them, and I didn't know how. I had no idea how to receive love or give it. I was so self-centered with fear and dishonesty and inconsideration, that my pride, I just lived on pride, drugs and pride. And I had a gift, Monsignor, I had a gift, this music, and I was always truthful there.
Yeah.
And but it got worse and worse. This addiction stuff, it's progressive. And here's the way it works. It works. The first stage is fun.
Mm.
Then it becomes fun and some problems, and then nothing but problems.
Wow.
And that's what happened. From 63, when Susan and I got married, to 1968, it just that was the ride we were on. And uh, in February of 1968, a friend of mine that I was running the streets with, his name was Frankie Lyman. He was the lead singer of the Teenagers. He had a song called Why Do Fools Fall in Love? And we were good friends, and we were taking drugs together, and he died in February of 68. And it scared me. And I didn't know what to do about it, but I wanted to stop. And Susan went to this 12-step spiritual 12-step recovery program, and she met this woman Lois, And Lois told her, she said, you say these four things to your husband when you get home. And when I see you next Friday, tell me what happened. And if he comes after you, you just keep repackaging these four things. Tell him you love him. Tell him you try to help him, but you're powerless. You have no power at all. You cannot help him. And tell him there's a place, there's a fellowship he can go to that knows the problem and knows the solution, and then excuse yourself. And that's exactly what she did when when she came home. I said, "Where you been?" She said, "I've been to a program. I got some problems. I need help." And I started a little argument with her, and she walked over to me and got close to me and said, "Dion, I adore you. I've been trying to help you the last 5 years, and I found out that I'm powerless. I thought what I said or what I was telling you that you could hear me, that you could understand what I was saying. I thought I could help you, and I found out I'm powerless. But thank God there's a fellowship that knows your problem, understands it, and has the solution. And they have the key to the jail cell you're in. And it opens from the inside. And that's where to go to get that key. Excuse me, I got to get the eggs." And she walked away. And the whole week, she repackaged these four things, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the end of the week, I couldn't get her to argue with, because I used to like to engage people in argument. That's the way I knew. That's the only way I knew how to do life. I didn't know any other way. And but I went to a meeting, and I've been clean and sober for 57 years.
Amazing.
And it's a 12-step program. I think you would probably know this, Monsignor, but the 12 steps were gleaned from the disciplines of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And the Oxford group picked up on it from England, and they brought it to the States, and that's how it got started, those 12 steps. And they're designed to lead you into union with God. And as you know, God created us in such a way only to work well when we're in union with him. And in this program, they tell you the most courageous thing a man can do is open his heart to his creator. And I took those steps, and it cleared out the clutter where I could receive this free gift that Jesus wanted to give me and was trying to give me all along, but I was just too messed up.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for that four-step challenge. Dion DiMucci is our guest. It's Dion, the Rock and Roll Philosopher is the name of his book. I want to ask you too, because you just mentioned earlier, Dion, you said, with all the mess of my life, I knew one thing. I knew I had been given a gift. And I'm thinking back to Dorothy Day, the wonderful social activist who said, everything we have is grace. Everything is God's gift. But I got to ask you, you do have an extraordinary gift, musician and singer and composer and all the other good things you do. Why would God give Dion those particular gifts? What did he want you to do with them?
First of all, I'm just very grateful for them. I'll be honest, just very grateful. I enjoy them, and I cherish them, and I don't take it for granted. I want to, hone them and develop them, and I till this day. And I believe that when I was a kid, and I heard Hank Williams and Jimmy Reed over the radio, I was hurled into a place of enchantment, transcendence, a place of pleasure and delight and beauty and truth and goodness. And all my life, I've been trying to write a song and develop so I could transmit this feeling to you and others that I got when I was 11 years old. I'm still that way today. I just want to be about my father's business and taking people to a higher reality. And maybe through the music, I could change the world a little, through music and brotherly love and the talent he gave me. So that's what I've been trying to do.
In Dion's book, Dion, the rock and roll philosopher, he's very open about his relationship with God. I often say in my own church, Dion, that I think people worship God, they pray to God, but the personal encounter piece is so often missing. A personal encounter, personal relationship with Jesus. You talk about the Lord, you talk about God's heart. So who is this man, Jesus, for you personally?
Everything. My friend Ralph Martin wrote a book called The Fulfillment of All Desire. And that's who Jesus is to me. When I realized, I had an encounter, I had an awakening that I knew Jesus was the Son of God. And when I knew he was the Son of God, Monsignor, I wanted to know every word he spoke. What did he say? Because I knew his identity now. The creed, when we say the creed, uh, at Mass, it has none of his teachings in it, but it has his identity and exactness. And once you know that, all of a sudden, all bets are, who are you going to listen to in this? My question was, what is truth and who has the authority to define it?
Hmm.
That was my question throughout my life. Like, who do I listen to? The president of the record company, the Pope, who do I listen to?
Yeah.
And when this, I had this encounter, and I bought a Bible. I wanted to know, I wanted to read the red letters. What did Jesus say? And I've been doing that. Um, I love it. He's everything to me. He's my best friend. He's he's without him. I mean, he glues my whole family together, and he's my everything.
Yeah. I promise
No
I'll wrap
more.
this pretty soon. We're going to be telling our listeners and watchers to make sure they pick up Dion, the rock and roll philosopher. But I got to ask you this. It hasn't been a straight line for you, this life of ours. Lots of valleys as well as mountaintops and lots of stuff in between. We live in this crazy world where not just politically, not even religiously, but the whole world seems to be divided, one set against another. It's easy to give up on hope. The old film director Frank Capra used to say the greatest disease in the human race is discouragement. So I'm going to ask you something. How is Dion, when life can be overwhelming, how do you maintain hope?
Well, I don't know. I must have. I think it's because my God is so big and all things are possible with God. I don't claim to have a lot of faith. Maybe I have a little faith, but my God is huge. He's huge. I mean, all things are possible with him. So I rely on him. I go with him. I rest in him. I talk to him. I listen to him. I I walk with him. I want to get close. I don't want to get better. I want to get closer.
Yeah.
And I think my hope just is all in him. Without him, how could I have hope and faith and love? He just takes you to a higher reality, a higher pitch, because in myself, you know how human beings are. They want revenge. I got to get even. I got to manipulate people. I don't have to live like that because I just do it. He'll helps me to do a day at a time, and I leave the results to him. And I could live an honest, open life and quite serene and peaceful. And hey, it it gets rough once in a while, but thank God he's with me through those times.
I want to thank Dion DiMucci for being with us and personally speaking. I hope our listeners and watchers will pick up the book because the man you just heard, who was honest and open and in many ways humble and giving all the glory to God, is the same guy who wrote this book. And it's a beautiful book. It's great testimony, not only to a life fully lived in music, but a man who treasures and has struggled like all of us to build family life, a man who has struggled with addiction and puts it right out front, and again gives the glory to God for his amazing ability to be sober these many years, and gives a lot of credit to this beautiful woman that he talked about throughout this interview, Susan, who really is a remarkable lady in so many ways, and you made that clear. Dion, you give a lot of people, especially guys like me who work in the church, a lot of hope because you've completely embraced the Lord, and more importantly, he has fully embraced you, and great, wonderful graces have come from that. Thank you for your life, for your testimony, for your music, and just for being Dion. Love you very much and treasure you and respect you. Thank you.
Monsignor, there's a play coming out called The Wanderer, and I think it'll hit Broadway this year. And you have to be my guest when it opens.
Well,
Okay?
thank you. And do you know, I hope you're using the same guy. Last year, we had Michael Wartella on the show. Is he still you?
Well, yeah, he was playing the lead, doing the lead in it.
Yeah, he's a great, and he's like you in so many ways. Not only is he a musical guy, but he also has struggled in his life, and he struggles with belief, but he's making good choices in his life. If he's a good version of the younger you, what a great blessing that is. So
He's
yes,
a beautiful guy. I love Mike.
he's a really good guy, and of course, he emulates you in so many ways. I'll definitely come to see the play, and I can't wait to see you in person, my friend. Thank you so much.
God bless.
Thanks for being with us on Personally Speaking. If you need to reach me, you can do that at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. You probably listened to this program on SiriusXM, the Catholic channel, 129, but you can also watch the program on YouTube by searching under Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante. We're also on Facebook at Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante, and on Instagram at Personally Speaking Podcast. If you go to Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante, you are offered not only this interview, which you can watch, but also Sunday Mass. We'd love to have you as a extended part of the Our Lady of Lourdes family from Massapequa Park, New York. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer of Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Janovitz. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.